I asked a professor about the evolution of facial hair or more like how we lost hair over time and stuff. And then they pointed out to me that there's 2 different species of lice on us, pubic lice and head lice.
And you get the pubic lice on your beard?
Are we?
Yes.
Where are we?
Here.
Why are we here? Not entirely clear. We are misfits thrust into existence by random chance, with no hints at all as to how we're supposed to make sense of it all. It's immensely bizarre. Here we are.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Here We Are podcast. I am comedian and science enthusiast Shane Mauss. That's what I'm going with right now, science enthusiast, because I'm not a scientist. I'm passionate about it. I think calling myself as a philosopher is just like weird and strange, and I hate the way that it sounds. So I don't really know what I am. I'm barely a comedian anymore. I'm just a somewhat funny person because I'm not touring or anything. I'm no longer, my job's on hold. I'm just doing this science podcast. I'm a guy who used to do a occupation that no longer exists, and joining me today is my good friend Tracy Fanara, who she was on one of the coolest Here We Are podcasts. Amazing timing. I happened to be going through Sarasota, Florida. I had gone to this moat aquarium to chat about dolphins in the past. Reached out to that guest for a suggestion, and it just so happened my timing was very from like a newsworthy media perspective or whatever.
Happened to be in a water crisis.
Happened to be in a water crisis. We talked a lot about the what are they called again? The red algae blooms?
Yeah, red tide.
Red tide. The red tide, the algae blooms. And then you did stand-up science, one of the last stand-up science in the before times, before the apocalypse. And then I got on social media. I broke my 2.5 years off from social media when quarantine happened. And I follow all my past guests on like Twitter or whatever else. And you have, I hope I don't make too many people jealous, too many listeners jealous here, but you have one of the best social media presence out of all of my past guests. You have fantastic like Instagram and Twitter stuff because you were on Mythbusters, you're into doing the media stuff, right?
Yeah, I just really like to procrastinate work, one of the two, you know.
You're fantastic at science communication. It's clearly a pretty big passion of yours.
Thank you. And I got you on the Earth Day. I got you on my Earth Day presentation. I don't even know what to call it. It was a live YouTube.
And now I needed to get you on because I was on your Instagram and you made a very important, exciting announcement about a new job that is you're a big deal now. You were before, but now you are a mover and a shaker.
Yeah. Not anybody can take 32 minutes to make a job change announcement. but I did.
Well, it absolutely is well worth talking about for much longer than that, if you ask me. What is the new job that you have? You're now in a position of power.
Well, yeah. And the thing is, I wanted to qualify the job with Mo that I absolutely loved, and I didn't want to do a LeBron. You know, like I wanted to make an announcement, but I didn't want to be like, yo, I'm taking my talents to South Beach. But I did put that in there, but it was qualifying. I did it how LeBron should have done it, you know? Like, I love Cleveland. I will always be part of Cleveland. I'm going to go to Miami. I'm probably going to be back to Cleveland.
I don't follow enough to know how LeBron did it. How
this
how
is a
did he?
huge deal. The first time that he left Cleveland, it was a big deal.
He was just like Audi.
It was, I mean, there was so much media around his announcement of his.
And that's what you were worried about. You were going to everyone was going to be like, you're a traitor.
Yeah, I didn't want
We
people to
liked
be
you
like,
when you were an aquarium person, not some
you're giving
government
up on Southwest
stooge.
Florida. That's what I thought
All right,
that it was
well-
going to be. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't in the aquarium. I was in a laboratory. I'm not a biologist.
So tell us all about this new, because this is incredible. You were already doing amazing research, but now you're in a position to make some large scale change potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it really makes sense. Like, this position is exactly the skill set that I have acquired over the past however many years. So I was, I got into environment because of living in Buffalo and learning about Love Canal, the incident, the hazardous waste dump site that started the EPA's Superfund program. And then when I learned about unsafe drinking water as the world's leading killer among children, I knew that I had to do something. Like, that was my calling. It was my passion, because I wanted to do something whether I was paid for it or not. And through my career,
Can I ask you about, I am just learning just now that unsafe drinking water is the world's largest killer of children. Is that in developed nations as well, or is it?
No, I mean, it's worldwide. So I think 1.8 million people are impacted or drink fecal contaminated water on a regular basis. It's just an insane number, and like it's crazy. It's literally a miracle.
You just ruined my day. That was the worst phrase. That was. I wouldn't have, when I started this podcast. I mean this one today. I wasn't thinking. I'm glad that I have iced tea in a LaCroix, because I'm going to have to, the next time I want to drink regular water, which is going to be tonight, I'm going to have to go through a whole mental process of getting right with the words fecal contaminated
well,
water.
If you think you're safe from it in those products or in bottled water or not. Not so much. I mean, tap water has more regulations on it. It has more checks and balances. I would take tap water over, unless you're somewhere where there's contaminated pipes, like
you really are the worst. You have a new show you've been doing, Tracy Ruins Everything. It's kind of like Adam Ruins Everything with environmental stuff, right? Just a fun way of just destroying everything people love, but from an environmental perspective. All right, hit me. Make me never want to have a beverage in my mouth ever again.
Well, you wouldn't last that long, but But for me, the big thing is Jelly Bellies, right? Like I'm obsessed with candy. I have a problem.
Are you, Tracy? You're gonna ruin Jelly Bellies for me?
Oh, you like them too?
They're my favorite.
Well, see, here's the problem. Okay, so I love them, and I try to ruin them for myself because sugar is the enemy. I can't. And here's the thing. Okay, so with Jelly Bellies, it really comes down to sugar, and Big Sugar is a huge business in Florida. And they are located just south of Lake Okeechobee, in between Lake Okeechobee and the Everglades. The Lake Okeechobee used to run into the Everglades, and this flow used to be, allowing for natural degradation of pollutants, biologically, chemically, and physically. But because sugar is in the way, the Everglades are basically being left in drought. They are really thirsty, and we're trying to find ways to get water back there. But we've changed the water quality so much that if we allow that to happen, the amount of phosphorus from all the fertilizer, the cattle, citrus, sugar, everything like that going into the Everglades would cause cattails to outcompete periphyton, which is the soil of the Everglades, and we'd have problems anyway. So we really screwed things up, and sugar's at the hand of it. So I really need to give up jelly bellies if I'm going to live my true life, like my truth.
You are so good at this. I asked you to ruin beverages for me, which you've made some great headway, and then you just decided throw in Jelly Belly. You didn't even know it happened to be my favorite is it my favorite candy? I don't want to.
What kind of Jelly Belly? Which flavors?
I don't want to get snarled in a lie here. I don't want listeners to hear like, hey, but you said Jolly Ranchers in a past episode,
right,
and then
like
get a lot of blowback from that. But
try
because
being
Jolly
a
Ranchers are up there.
Try being a scientist. You don't want blowback for changing findings.
Changing your
You said not to wear a mask. Now you're saying to wear a mask.
How dare you work with the best information you have at the time and then update things when new information is learned? I do not agree with that. We should everything that whatever I learned at the age of 8, that was it. I don't change my mind. If you want to stick some new content in there, you are my enemy. And that's how I'm going to view you. All right. First off, a couple things that we're going to need to get out of the way. Sorry if this is too much of a going all over the place.
Yeah, well, I didn't even say what I'm doing for my job.
No, we'll get there. But this is more important. Favorite Jelly Belly?
That is
what do you
important. Pear. Definitely pear. Second, buttered popcorn.
Oh, pear's so good. Butter popcorn is literally one of the worst ones, Tracy.
I knew it was going that way. I knew it.
You won me over.
I know.
And then
I know.
You just
you're
into the buttered popcorn. What do you think about the joke ones? The
Harry Potter ones?
No. You spin the thing and it's like, and you pick which color you're going to choose, and then each color has both a good and a disgusting one attached to it.
Yeah, it's a Harry Potter game.
Oh, that's a Harry Potter game.
Well,
okay.
I don't know if it started there. I that's the first time I saw it was when my nephews brought that over.
Have you tried it?
It's disgusting. The grass really tastes like grass, and that is definitely the best of the disgusting ones.
Oh yeah, I actually threw up from one. Not surprised. I had one small. I didn't think that one little Jelly Belly that tastes like vomit would have the capacity to actually make me vomit. But whoever's taste testing these things, like this connoisseur of disgusting, I mean, they nailed it. Yeah, on point.
Totally nailed. And that's the crazy thing, I remember thinking about that mentally. Well, it's just that big. Anything that big can't be that gross.
There's no way.
But
how could it taste exactly like a rotten egg? But it does.
Let's
They crushed it.
I think we
should change the subject.
We have to, because I'm getting nauseous. I remember when you drink 151 and someone spins you around.
I'll ruin your day too.
Yeah, what? Oh, yeah.
You think you're the only one that can ruin things around here, Tracy? You've met your match. Okay. Tell us about, all right, let's just, first off, I would dig into this subject more, but I already know you're going to ruin so much stuff, so that I'm happy just glossing over things. One, let's get back to your history, because that's where I cut you off with the with needing to. I don't know why I needed to hear about diarrhea water so badly, but I did.
Well, that's a big deal. I remember, like, that was one of those moments in my life that it completely opened my eyes to how far, you know what I mean? Like the haves and the have-nots, like the fact that we just turn on a faucet and we can trust that water to drink it. Like it's a miracle. It really is. And it's something that we're really taking for granted right now, because with climate change, as we have saltwater encroachment and our available fresh water gets less and less and less. I mean, you know, we really have to put environment as a priority moving forward. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
Before it ruin the future.
Yeah, you would think that. What do people think about drinking water? I know that the climate change stuff is like, because you're you know, you're not just a researcher, as we mentioned. You're super active, you know, you've done TV stuff, you're trying to do more, you do all this social media stuff, you're doing every damn thing you can to get the word out to the public in any way that you possibly can. I would think that the clean drinking water stuff would be an easier sell to the public than global warming, Florida going to be underwater in 20 years or something like that. Do you find that to be the case?
I mean, just like people take everything else in their day-to-day that will be impacted by climate change, they take water for granted too. You know, you would think the sixth mass extinction would make some kind of like impact, like we're losing 100 species a day, but they're not feeling it yet. And I always kind of say that's like a game of Jenga, where these blocks are being taken from the Jenga set and we're at the top, and we might not feel that we're structurally unsound, but at some point we're going to fall. You know, the most it's so tough with these things that are not what they think or what the general public thinks is an immediate impact. Like, for example, Florida red tide, everybody was up in arms. I mean, we had, and look at the pandemic too, same thing, you know, like that's us not worrying about deforestation and still using palm oil. And then we have this zoonotic virus that's released, and we're shocked by it. Now we need to scramble when the virologists and immunologists have been telling us to do so the entire time. It's basically the same thing as climate change. And climate change is part of that, right? But it's
I mean, with the way that you know, when I'm 40 now. When I was a kid, I literally, you know, I'm from small-ish town, Wisconsin, but it's surrounded by farms everywhere, and I would go to, and it was literally like, you know, old MacDonald had a farm type stuff back then, and that doesn't really exist in the way that it used to. Not that was like a perfect thing either, but with packing animals in closer, I mean, we're just going to keep on having more and more issues with pathogens. Absolutely.
And then when we're not only that, when we're talking about agriculture and we're talking about water and water quality and algae blooms, I mean, we have a dead zone, the size of, I think it's New Jersey every year in the Gulf of Mexico. This year it was recorded at a little bit smaller because we had a hurricane event come through, mix that water, and by the time that the cruise was done, it was really patchy still. It hadn't completely reformed. But we had this huge dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico, and it's crazy because 38% of the country drains to this Mississippi Atchafalaya watershed down into the Gulf of Mexico. You wouldn't think that, you know, a farmer in Ohio or Illinois or a utility in Illinois or wherever would have an impact to shellfish farmers or fishermen in Louisiana. But in fact, everything is connected in water and air. They don't abide by state lines. So all of this comes in, and 70% of the nutrients coming into the Gulf of Mexico is from agriculture, because we over-fertilize. All that fertilizer runs off. So it comes, all this fresh water, because of how we've managed our land to prevent from flooding, comes out into the Gulf of Mexico. It's less dense than the salt water below it. So that less dense water sits on top, not allowing, mixing or oxygen to go to those bottom waters. And then with all that fertilizer and that fresh water, algae blooms form. And when algae blooms are really thick, they can block out sunlight, preventing photosynthesis from everything underneath. And then when the algae blooms die, that process uptakes oxygen from the water column, causing something called the dead zone, or an area of really low oxygen that is catastrophic for marine life. And this is a huge area of the Gulf of Mexico. So yeah, like things like that, I feel like where people locally, it's a huge deal. But we need to find some way to connect each other through empathy. We have to, because these problems are just going to keep on growing and growing, and more people are going to be impacted. And figuring out how to get people to care now about someone that they don't know is our biggest challenge when it comes to climate change or water quality or whatever it is.
So it's very easy to care about the red tide when you're a fisherman in the Gulf,
right,
who can no longer get fish.
Or when your hotel is empty.
But to be a farmer in Iowa, to like understand that the consequences of what you're doing are causing that I'm sure there's most people that have never even heard that potentially their fertilizers do well. I don't know. I don't know what kind of regulations and stuff are on farmers around here, but some of this is just becoming mindful as kind of a culture. I feel like my father, who's from 𝕊𝕐𝕚, Iowa, this city of like 300 people or something like that, maybe a little more. Anyway, we'll drive past it. He would always show me like, well, there's where we dumped our trash all of the time, because it was like, oh, you dump it by the Mississippi and then the Mississippi will take it away.
Right.
Well, this is like, or I was watching Mad Men not too long, not that this is like a documentary or something like that.
No, but it's a reflection of the past, for sure.
Yeah. And you see them out having a picnic, and just like no one cleans up anything in a park or whatever. Afterwards, you just leave it. And it's just, no one was trying to be an asshole. It was just like completely oblivious.
Yeah.
And as someone who like I'm oblivious about so much in life that like I can out oblivious anybody. And so I feel people there that I think a lot of people just simply don't know. So isn't the answer, as much as I hate to say, as someone who's like never been like some pro-government guy, isn't the answer just policy changes at the end of the day?
It absolutely is. But to make those policy changes, and you look back through history, and every big policy change was at the hand of citizens, the public outcry. Like every big policy change had something to do with the people getting involved. And the only way that people are going to understand what to yell about is if they're educated enough scientifically to voice those opinions. Like if you don't know anything about science, you just don't, and you see your fish dying outside and you know that you're not catching any fish, that's all it is. You're like, I have no idea. But when you understand that there aren't strict rules on nutrient pollution, and that the regulations in another state affect you and your state, and then you realize that there needs to be federal regulations because water and air don't have those boundaries, like they don't abide by state lines. But yeah, so it's science, it's education, it's the public getting involved, and then it's regulation change. And to tell you the truth, state of Florida, we had that big dual algae bloom, completely crushed economy, and that's something that really, when you see economy being devastated, that's when change starts to happen. But the people wanted change. The people voted for whoever talked about environment more. And so there was money put into, restoring the Everglades and preventing the overflows from this big lake called Lake Okeechobee that is famous for cyanobacteria blooms. Now, that's not the regulation that I wanted to happen, because it really wasn't regulation. It was more funding for Band-Aids. But that's a story for another day. I would have liked to see stormwater regs change, but the truth is that what they did was a faster change than what I did propose. It's you're right. It does come down to regulation change, because honestly, we are not responsible enough or empathetic enough to change our behaviors and actions on a daily basis so that they don't impact somebody else.
First off, I loved the water and air don't care about state lines. Such an important point to make, and not just thinking about things on a national level, but a global level. It's a little tricky to get people, because this is a big, these like arbitrary little borders that we draw around places are a big part of our identity and who we are and the flags that we wave and
our policy
and our policies. I wonder, as someone who wishes that the world was more science-based, policy-driven, and governed. Not that it would be necessarily a panacea, but I wonder if within this crisis there could just be a movement towards, rather than the political stratifying of like, we're the mask side or the not mask side, or we're the global warming side or the not of. I wonder if we can get people to eventually just vote for expertise, eventually, because I think you could get people to start to tune into what expertise looks like, which is that understanding that we all have different jobs, we all have different things that we do in life that we gain experience and mastery over, and within doing that, we have the experience of understanding that learning about something and becoming an expert in something comes along with the exploration of complexity and nuance that comes into each topic. And so once you understand that, it's quite easy to know when someone's not an expert on something, because it's very like, I mean, we're all hearing what it, the kind of obnoxious political talk that goes on from non-experts.
Right. And it's, and I like a lot of what you said about, voting for experts, but the problem with that is that you vote for an expert, and I know a lot of scientists and engineers, they're not very good communicators, and people make decisions during those debates. And then, you think about an expert in one topic, but then you have all of these other things that they're not expert in. And you saying that actually made me think differently. Maybe we should be forming teams. We shouldn't be picking just one president. We should be choosing team members for the most powerful team. And I mean, it's not always going to be, it's going to be hard, because you look at the Yankees when they had everybody. They didn't win world championships. We have to pick the team that works well together and complements each other. And that's a tough thing to achieve.
Yeah, that's a interesting. We value things like IQ or like individual performance or whatever, and it really neglects the very idea of we are social animals that learned to work in groups, and quite testably you can see that the team with like the highest individual IQ person on it or whatever isn't necessarily the most effective team. They've done like a bunch
No.
of studies about this, and because it doesn't necessarily translate to the ability to the ability to
Right.
solve a difficult math problem doesn't necessarily translate to the ability to work with other people.
No. So what they do, and I know that I was a presidential management fellow, and they watched you and watched how you worked with people and watched how you talked in a room. It was pretty intimidating, but that process, it's almost like they were looking not just at IQ, because they knew that you had the grades and the intelligence, but they were also looking at SQ and EQ. And yesterday, I applied for a TED.
What's SQ and EQ?
Social and
Social intelligence
emotional.
and oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. And so yesterday on my TED fellowship, I proposed something called PsyQ, which is, intelligence with empathy. It's like a combination of the two, and kind of spreading that and emitting that, to kind of inspire change in people around you. Yeah, I don't know if they'll buy it either. I just made it up on the spot, so we'll see.
No, I mean, I think that when we talk about empathy, for some people, not, the people that listen to this podcast are used to kind of hearing, these more complex conversations, but I do feel like in regular life, if I'm going and hanging out or talking with some old high school buddies or something like that, the word empathy, especially in men, has this like has this almost stigma to it of like this weakness or softness,
Right.
and it's like not tough enough or something. But empathy, the ability to understand another person's mind, or even another mammal's mind or whatever, is something that was such a it's one of the like the amazing human specialties that we've evolved. It's one of the things that got us where we are, is our ability to, in terms of from being able to hunt in groups, to being able to gather, to being able to then build whole civilizations, took the ability to know, to make predictions on what other people were thinking. And so
You're exactly right.
we almost need another word for it or something. It's almost, empathy now has such a, because there's,
I mean, social
I feel like,
awareness, I think, isn't really strong enough, and it's too long. Yeah, there's got to be another word probably that I don't know.
because if I tell someone about theory of mind or something like that, people will be like, yes, well, that's a terrific thing that we have, but it's
Right.
basically, that is, attached to empathy.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said about it being kind of a signal of evolution, because we look at our other animal counterparts and how they're really, I mean, animals have different ways of working in a family or a team, but for the most part they're for personal gain, and to try to get away from that and see big picture. And some animals actually do that really well. They see, they know that if they go for something right now, they're going to lose out on something bigger in the long run. There are animals that have that ability, but that's what we need to think more about. And I say empathy, meaning that caring about other people, of course, but it's also about caring about future generations, caring about what happens to the world after you're gone, and what kind of impact you have, and how you're going to leave the world when you leave. So it's, and then it comes down to, not just empathy, really thinking even if you're doing selfishly, when it comes to environment, if you're thinking about long-term economics, and this is within our lifetime, prioritizing environment is going to be a major focus if we want to preserve long-term economics.
Yeah, I mean, even just thinking about your future self, like thinking about the Shane 1 year from now, this is something I have never ever been good at. I think that it's speaking of another thing, that humans evolved this incredible capacity for, as much as we beat ourselves up for people's inability to control their impulses, we actually can do it much better than almost any other primate out there. It's just that we don't always tap into that that trait of ours. And this pandemic's a very good example of us failing to pass the marshmallow test of like, hey, if everyone can just hang tight for a few weeks, you get to have more rights and more freedom without the
Right.
potential for illness
Right.
in the future.
Right.
And people are like, I need to get to every live concert right now. What do you mean I can't have all
And
my
all
normal
the toilet
things?
paper. We need all the toilet paper
And
right
all
now
of
too.
the toilet paper. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So-
that was an interesting thing to see how people thought that their rights were taken away, whether it was wearing masks or, you know, not being able to go to a concert or a nightclub. It was an
Their motorcycle
interesting
rally.
it was interesting to see. You can tell a lot about a person's personality as their attitude as they were going through the pandemic.
I said this a bunch of times. To me, this was a lot like a global mushroom trip, in the way that it revealed our inner selves to one another. Like we're all the most ourselves we've ever been. Environmentalists are the most, passionate about the
true.
environment. I'm the most passionate about science I've ever been as a science communicator. Conspiracy theorists are rattling off the most conspiracies at breakneck speed.
Oh yeah, they're going
they now
far
have
this
like
time.
it's like the first conspiracy theories weren't even enough. Now there's like conspiracies about how those conspiracies involved, and it's every so it's a real good we're learning a lot about ourselves.
That's one way to put it. We are learning a lot about ourselves. And I'm
of
sorry I
hard
keep on
lessons.
messing with my hair. It is I'm doing this outside and I'm in Florida in August. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea. I could just see
Yeah.
it frizz up. It's funny. Okay, anyway.
Oh, I can't see it from here. I think you're fine. Tracy, we're talking about we're talking about this preventing the sixth mass extinction.
Yeah, and
or
I'm worried about my hair. See, that's
slowing
the
it
problem
down.
with people today.
Yeah, there you go. But you want to look good on a podcast to communicate these ideas. So
Right.
There's another thing that you have to factor in. Life is so complicated.
So complicated.
So tell us about the new job that you got. I mean, I guess you could maybe quick for the people
No,
that
this is
didn't
a
hear the
perfect
first time
lead-in.
what your job was at 𝕊𝕐𝕗 quickly, and
Okay.
then how you got into.
Yeah, so I realized that, going through history, that it really is the public that has made changes. I proved with my dissertation that low impact development retrofit, going to urban environments or even agriculture. What?
Sorry, I missed that word.
Low
Can you say that
im-
again? Oh, you said retrofit.
Yeah, retrofit.
Okay.
So going back
Can you explain
and redesigning an area. And I found that if we did that and implemented things like infiltration trenches, rain gardens, cisterns, disconnected our what's called impervious surface, that's stuff that water doesn't penetrate through, like concrete or a house. If we did that, we can get to 90 pre-development hydrology, almost like there's nothing on top of it. And realizing and developing.
Wait, I'm sorry. What do you mean pre-development hydrology?
So that means before anything was built on their land, like mimicking the natural environment. Yes. So you slow the water down and allow that water to infiltrate and be treated naturally through natural soils, or you can actually enhance that through filter media. So for my master's, I developed, I worked on a team that developed a filter media that removes nutrients from stormwater runoff. So when I did that and I realized stormwater regulations didn't change, I looked back through history and I realized, no, that's what I'm missing. I'm missing the public. I'm missing the communication aspect and the informing the public so that we can rise up together and demand change. And so I took the job at 𝕄𝕒𝕚 because it had both the research and the communication aspect. Now, I wasn't too fond of focusing on, I'm so big picture and so watershed scale, you know, and I was supposed to work on a microalgae called Florida red tide. But then I started talking to the public and hearing how it affected their lives. And I got sucked in and because I care about people. And it was the 2018 dual bloom that caused the Florida water crisis was the most important experience that I've had, but also the most depressing. As a scientist, so Florida red tide acts differently than other algae species. There's thousands of species. Every species has their own thing, their own motivation. What makes this species so unique is that the toxin can cause mass fish kills and harm to our precious megafauna, but it can also aerosolize. And what that means is that it goes up into the air and attaches to sea salt particles, moves on land with winds, and causes people to cough or sneeze. For those with asthma or other respiratory illnesses, this can be really serious. So my first job was to redevelop a website. So I redeveloped the website and developed 3 apps to alert the public of where the effects of Florida red tide are so that they can protect themselves and choose the beach that doesn't have these effects. Now, when the bloom of 2018 happened, it was devastating. Economically, public health wise, recreation. I mean, like you see tons of dead fish washing up, dolphin. I mean, it was depressing. It was terrible. And people wanted an answer. They wanted to point their finger at something. And the first finger that was pointed was at sugar, which is funny that we were talking about this earlier. And when it comes to Florida red tide, as far as their contribution goes, I'm not saying they don't contribute, because when a bloom does get close enough to shore, it can use surface water nutrients. It's just that connecting it to those Lake Okeechobee overflows, it only contributes like 3 to 5% of the flow, and up to 9% of the nutrients going into Lake Okeechobee and then overflow. So it plays a role. It's just that people wanted to point the finger at one thing, and I don't blame them, because if there's one thing that's causing it, then they could fix it. But there is no quick fix for this toxic algae species, which is native and plays an important role in the ecosystem. So it was really tough. It was really tough. And then to get people to understand that nutrients isn't just coming from that Lake Okeechobee overflow, it's coming from wastewater. It's coming from septic, wastewater overflows, septic. It's coming from our lawns. Like, we all play a role, and getting people to take responsibility for their own actions was so difficult. But it was the most effective way to communicate, is to show people what they can actually do. So my expertise in retrofit design actually came in really handy, and I did over 200 talks to the public in like a year and a half. Like, it was something insane. To try to help us all get on the same page. But it was a tough time for sure. But working on that microscopic algae, I realized was really important. So I was offered a position from NOAA, and
NOAA. I keep on wanting to say NIH because that's all in the news over and over again.
it's right down the street. So
Really?
yeah, in Silver Spring. Well, NOAA's in Silver
what's
Spring.
NOAA?
I think NOAA is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And so I'm glad that we talked about how important it is to look at things from a global scale, because this job, I'm going to be managing all of U.S. modeling efforts. So, and the reason, well, the goal of my role is to develop a unified Earth systems model, a model that will take into account all of Earth's systems so we can answer those big questions that have yet to be answered. And it's just the perfect role for me because it takes my modeling experience into account, the communication and development experience that I had at Moat. And then it also uses the research, because right now I'm writing a request for publication. It's called a funding opportunity call, basically. So it's pretty awesome. Like, it's crazy because in the first week I was talking to, people working on microbiologic models and macrofauna models and river and tidal models, and then atmospheric and coastal. Like, it's crazy, all the parts that are working together. And I just see so much potential in this, and I'm working with just brilliant, like a huge team of brilliant people. Maybe NOAA should run the US.
Yeah, well, we need to do something differently. That's for sure. And I love the idea. I mean, speaking of I've said this long before this president. I said this during Obama and before. Obama I liked and everything, but I don't think that there should be a president. I don't think that there should be one person in charge. It makes no sense to me on any level. If what a president's doing is so important, like, what happens when they take a break or go to sleep at night? The world keeps on spinning. They can't be, one person simply cannot do everything that needs to be done.
No, but it was never supposed to be like that. It was supposed to be that the team was Congress. But,
right.
When executive orders are, put in place to override decisions made by a unified team, that's when it starts to get a little tough.
Yeah, right.
Like rolling back environmental regulations.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how much about that you want to talk about, because this is, it's been, speaking of oblivious, I know the tiniest little tip of the iceberg of what's been going on environmentally since the beginning of the pandemic, when, early on, my environmentalist friends were like, yay, terrific, there's no cars on the road for 2 weeks, and now finally people will see human impact and the harm we're doing to the environment, and now surely it is just too clear to ignore, and we will create policies and changes to protect our Earth.
I'm usually an optimist, but when people were saying that, and people were like, talk about all the good environmental stuff, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to hold off a minute.
Oh my gosh. So Tracy, ruin everything for us right now. What has happened since that time? It's decades.
Yeah,
decades of rollbacks.
Yeah, but the decades of rollbacks have been happening for the past, years, 3 years.
Yeah.
So, we had the Clean Water Act rollback. That was a big one because it eliminated stormwater from regulation. Stormwater, and before 2015 or whenever the Clean Water Act was boosted up, the Clean Water Act was kind of vague. So for the first time, we really had some clear outlines. And stormwater, wetlands, these areas that are now omitted from this rule, it's the largest non-point source of pollution. And that's what's causing the dead zone. You know what I mean? Like to eliminate such an important part of our water cycle to actually care about and regulate. It's just crazy to me. I mean, I understand if you know nothing about science and stormwater, how it can seem like that wouldn't be a big deal. To protect an area that's only wetland sometimes, you know? But the truth is that it's stormwater, and all of this water is we're not making any new water, you know, like the water that we have now is the water that we had thousands of years ago, will be thousands of years from now. So we better treat it accordingly. And rolling back regulations on the Clean Water Act is not the way to move forward. And then, you know, there were,
who rolls back a clean water? Like, who's against clean
water? Right. You wouldn't. Apparently, well, here's the thing: you have to keep in mind that regulations, especially this one, was eliminating the use of a small chunk of land for agriculture. So it was, it had to do with economics and making other people happy, but we have to really work together to do what's in the best interests of the whole, and not just today, in the future too. And the Clean Water Act, including the stormwater, was a huge improvement. But then there's conservation areas and places where drilling is allowed and fracking and but what happened since the pandemic, many things got rolled back. A lot of there's just a lot. But the main thing for me is when it was made that polluters, miners, industry, factories, drillers, all of that stuff, their fines on environmental regs or not meeting environmental regulations, those fines were waived. And so right now, and even still, pollution can just happen. That's why we got into this position where we have regulations, because these chemicals were leaching into groundwater and soils, and there are cancer clusters and birth defects, and you might not see it right away. But by the time you see it, it's far too late. And by the time you actually hear about it, that's when it's hitting the middle class, because, the people without the voices, the underserved communities, they're affected first. And even if they vote against themselves, it doesn't matter. They're affected first. And by the time it hits the middle class, it's, I have 4 friends from high school that have 3 that have passed away. 1 that's stage 4 cancer, my age and younger. And that was because of lack of regulations over time. And we're setting ourselves up for more of that. I mean, there are thousands of Superfund sites around America that haven't been cleaned up. And right now, because of the cutbacks on environment, we are cleaning up the smallest amount of sites since the development of the Superfund program. So it's or since it got going, I should say. But yeah, so we're at a point where we need to make a difference, and even though, our you heard about the overage day, the environmental overage day. I'm probably saying that wrong, but it's the day a year when we exceed our ecologic availability. Basically, we're taking more than we're giving back to the environment. Like, it's not recovering. And every year that date gets pushed back and back in the year. So this year, or last year, it was July. Before that, it was or maybe June, and before that was July. You know, like it just keeps on getting worse, except this year. The one thing that did happen is that date got pushed back, and it was yesterday. But that was just a temporary thing because we are back. You know, the flights aren't back up and running like they used to be, but they will be eventually. I'm just hoping that we're realizing with business that this remote work and virtual meetings, it actually works, and you're up close and personal to that person. I hope that kind of stays to limit the amount of flights that we need to take.
Then this is one more reason to listen to my podcast. It's now very environmentally friendly, rather than going to a live show.
You're right.
I'm making a stupid joke, but I actually didn't. I just thought of that.
Were people flying to your shows? I mean, I don't blame them. They should, but
I was flying to go.
Yeah,
to
you were.
perform shows, and then they were driving. Talk a little bit about this. Your idea of unified Earth systems. Is this because usually you hear this term in physics a lot, of these unifying theories of like, well, we need to figure out how relativity and quantum mechanics work together. And is that kind of the same general idea?
Yeah, it's finding out how our biologic, physical, chemical, atmospheric, how all of our systems work together. And you know, the reason why we haven't been able to answer a lot of the questions that we still have about how the planet works is because we haven't been able to connect these systems. And the reason for that is sometimes it's just, you know, not enough monitoring, not enough data to be able to create those models, or inconsistent data, and because we are limited by funding as scientists. But with modeling, the beauty of it is that it can fill in those spaces. You know, not with all systems, but if we're stepping back and looking at a global system, our grid size starts to get bigger and bigger, meaning that it gets less and less detailed. And the places where those data are lacking, it kind of starts to be okay when you're looking at it from a bigger scale. But the importance of that is that we need to, I mean, look at, for example, Saharan dust. It's not just the United States. It's not just, you know, Iowa to Louisiana. It's the globe. You know, Saharan dust comes over from Africa and provides nutrients to the Amazon, but also provides nutrients to a marine cyanobacteria, which is a precursor for the toxic algae species 𝕊𝕙𝕤𝕤. You know, like, and what they're doing in Africa to either promote the release of that sand or to dampen it, that impacts us. It impacts us directly. It also impacts the Amazon in another way. But when and then you look at our trash and our pollution that way too, and how, you know, everybody's always pointing the finger at other countries about their pollution, but our trash is going over there, and that's, you know, we're adding to that problem. So I think having kind of a unified Earth system.
I didn't even know that. We send our trash to other countries?
Yes. Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't even. I mean, I feel a little foolish for just not assuming that was already the case.
It's crazy, right? You see these places in India that have all these electronics just like thrown in a river, and it wasn't theirs, it was ours. And like, you know, China isn't taking our recycling anymore, which is why our recycling has gone down. Because apparently our recycling was too contaminated. And I do, like, in one way, like, our recycling rules aren't really, people don't know that you can't put a pizza box in the recycling bin.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain plastics that can't go.
Why?
Well, with the pizza, it's the oil that kind of messes up machinery. And then with like plastic bags, Publix will recycle them. Certain places will recycle plastic bags separately, but if you put it in a regular recycling facility, it'll gum up their system. So they'll just put that whole bin right in the landfill. So it's just, I understand that more education was needed to get a better product for somebody else to recycle, but it's just crazy that we were sending our trash all the way to China to recycle. It's just, but we are still sending our trash. So pretty soon they're not going to want our trash. They're not going to want our industry that's over there, polluting their land. We're going to have to do something back here. And that's the one thing that I see positive with the pandemic is that, if our industry manufacturing all of that, if it has to come back to the United States, people aren't going to stand for that kind of pollution. We're going to have to innovate. We're going to have to find renewable energy sources, and we're going to have to find new ways to be more sustainable so that we're not impacting public health. But anyway,
can it be sold as a job creation?
Oh yeah,
program?
Yeah. It's
right?
Definitely a job creation. It's just at those companies that at the top, they can't save that kind of money that they were saving paying workers a lot less in another country, But I'm kind of all over the place with this. The point is that
I think you're nailing it. Yeah, but sorry.
Yeah. So the point is that if we're looking at the Earth, if we're looking at our systems globally, we'll start to think about our systems globally at the personal level, as long as that education is conveyed.
What are some of the big questions that you would love to really? You're an ambitious a person. Now you're going to have this new position, all of these teams and everything that you can utilize. I mean, we're at least probably as well positioned as ever to gain more data and use AI and process data and things like that. I mean, there's certainly been a number of wonderful technological advances to learn
AI,
more.
cloud computing, and community science efforts, getting the public to join in, take ownership, and become scientists with us and help us gather data. That's another huge part of that. But those big questions, climate change, sea level rise, ocean acidification, our coral reefs, biodiversity extinction, more accurate prediction and forecast for natural disasters like hurricanes, wildfires, drought. If with climate change, if people are going to have to be shifted around and moved, where are they going to go? Where should they go? Where can they go? Things like that. I mean, this global model will be able to be used for hundreds or thousands of years, built upon and made more, more detailed as we start innovating. Technology gets better.
Well, I'm very excited for you. Will you come back on again?
When I know what I'm doing, actually, yeah.
When you actually know what you're doing.
That's a
and report back.
Yes.
And we're like, oh, this is hell. I hate it here. It's impossible. We're all screwed. That's going to be the next episode. I am very excited for, and I'm excited because a few of the things that I want to plug before you, or I want to discuss before we wrap up, is the many things that you do in terms of public communication. Like I said, a lot of the academics that I have, like, some of them don't even have a Twitter account. Yeah. Almost no one has an Instagram account, and like you're putting out so much incredible content all of the time, and to make things visual and entertaining for people is and accessible is such a big part of what needs to be done. I was watching one of your videos. So you're so I mean, I think that in a lot of your videos, you're just this real like delightful, positive. Here's a fun fact about this and that, but then my favorite one, this one touched me. You got a little you got a little rough around the edges. You were, it really spoke to me. It was like so much of like my disposition on things. You put out a survey to fans. This is recently about, by the time this comes out, people might need to go back a little bit on your Instagram. But you asked people if they wanted to hear about the Mars rover or of like some new Earth
climate change report. Yep.
Yeah. And people picked Mars, and then you just gave them like a real talking to about it, and then like begrudgingly told them like just like you with the most annoyed delivery ever gave them facts about Mars, which was hilarious. Like it's a planet of rust that you guys want to hear about rather than the one that we live on and are dependent on, that's full of life everywhere. Right. This is what you guys want to hear about. What is up with people's penchant for the outer space stuff? Like, it was my first love too, like when I was a teenager. Thinking about the universe and our place in it. Physics was my first love. After math, I guess. But regardless, like, I get the attraction, but it is so funny to
really think about it.
Like, outer space, or like, whoa, what if there's aliens? And you can go outside and anyone could go outside and go to a park, and if you look hard enough, you'll find some sort of species of something or other that you were completely unfamiliar with before.
Hey, did you know the new finding? You know, they found on a planet that that there is an element or a compound that when it's in solid phase, it's less dense. Like, that's crazy, right?
is that you're talking about Earth right now?
It's ice.
It's ice.
Yeah, I'm talking about water, that thing that we kind of need that isn't really accessible anywhere else. Yeah, that thing.
That thing. Yeah, ice. Pretty cool stuff.
It's pretty cool stuff.
And it's just, I guess, because this isn't just, I've made this point on the show a number of times of, again, bringing up, I guess, what I would call just mindfulness, of just being aware of your surroundings, the things that you pass by every day, just how trees work, the critters everywhere that are, it's just hard when you're used to them. When I went to Australia and I saw like their possums, I was like, oh my, because they have the cutest possums on planet Earth. I don't know if you've seen. Oh
no, I haven't. I'll have to look that up.
I'll send you some pic. They're so cute, and they it's amazing. And they hate them because I guess they get in like their attics or whatever, so they're like pests to them. and our squirrels are like they see our squirrels are like, you guys just have these squirrels around all the time and you don't appreciate how incredible these things are. And it's just, you get accustomed to something and it's hard to really appreciate, because when you're a little kid, you don't need to be taught that like insects are interesting. When you're a little kid, you naturally have this curiosity and want to like collect them in jars or burn these poor things with a magnifying glass or whatever. Point is, you do have a natural curiosity.
Right.
It's something, no one needs to learn how to be curious about the environment. It's something that's unlearned over time. And I don't know if it's our education system or we just, maybe it's you hit puberty and you start thinking about, boys or girls, or your interests change into the different levels of life, and then you graduate or whatever, and you be like, well, what's this job stuff, and how do I make the money that is so very important? Whatever it is,
stop exploring.
We just we stop exploring, and it's something that seems like inherent in who we are.
And I think we're all kind of guilty of that. And that's why, honestly, how you said that I'm usually really pleasant in my videos. So a lot of the videos that I posted were from a kids show called Animal Outtakes. Now, I'm not about it. And
that's why.
And so, first of all, it's a kids show. But second of all, I am just so, every time I'm around an animal, it's so new to me that I'm like genuinely just like so amazed by the fact that I am this close to this animal that I've never seen before.
Yeah.
It's
my last 3 days, I was learning about sloths, which I already knew some about sloths, and then I got on this last night. I got on this kick of light. I asked a professor about the evolution of facial hair, or more like how we lost hair over time and stuff, and then they pointed out to me that there's 2 different species of lice on us: pubic lice and head lice.
And you get the pubic lice on your beard?
I don't know if
went like that.
I know, certainly you could. I'm not sure if it stays there. I don't know if it's the right environment. And then I went on this whole lice rabbit hole, because that because most other mammals just have, they
lice.
have the same hair so they have the same louse on their fur, the fur that covers their whole body. We have like actual genetic drift. We have like like genetic islands of speciation in the lice on our bodies. And then I looked into it, and it's like, it's also how we know when we were like near gorillas at this point in our evolutionary history, when we were near Neanderthals, when we might have started wearing clothes, because there's clothes lice too, is a whole other species.
This is crazy.
Blew my brain to bits, and it just took a little bit of like, oh, pubes are funny, I'm gonna do a little Google search on that, and then it was just like one mind-blowing thing after another. But that's the cool thing, is we have at our fingertips, with anyone can just go on Wikipedia and go on a little down a little wormhole and learn all of this incredible stuff now.
Yeah.
And I think that we just need to steer people toward that direction, maybe a little less Fast and Furious, or what's the biggest, craziest explosion we can capture in a movie with Vin Diesel or whatever.
I was on Mythbusters. I know how that is.
And maybe a little more finding ways to get people to appreciate the nuance and complexity in life and within nature.
I mean, it's like the tough part is convincing producers that environment is actually visual. It's like, it's so funny. They think that ghosts and finding Bigfoot is acceptable, but not.
You've heard my bit about that. I believe, all these people trying to find Bigfoot, or even like the Loch Ness Monster. Is, you work in an aquarium, like, assume the Loch Ness Monster was real. It wouldn't be any more interesting than these critters on my shirt right here. I got a seahorse. What do we got? We got a whale. We got a couple of whales on there. How, like, if a Loch Ness Monster
on there.
If a Loch Ness Monster was real, it'd be like, okay, there's a giraffe type-ish sort of fish thing.
But that's the thing. It's about the unknown. Just like the fascination with Mars over Earth. It's like, they assume that they know what's around them, and they kind of don't want to know if they don't, because then
trees, I get it.
right,
Done.
right.
Yeah.
So you're not supposed to know about outer space. That's a mystery to everybody.
Yeah.
Maybe that's part of the problem, is that we don't want to realize what we don't know about what's around us. It's like an ego thing. I don't know.
Maybe.
That's like a made up.
It might just be that as a culture, it's just, this is just a part of much in the same way that we have learned an appreciation for nuance and complexity a bit as we've aged. I still have a long ways to go. I'm a pretty immature person for the age of 40, but you see like a state of arrested development in lots of people, depending on their life path. So to society and society's interests in things can go different directions and move toward an appreciation of other things rather than celebrating the base level. I've been going crazy lately, just like the prideful ignorance that's going on right now is so scary to me, because it's one thing when someone's like, oh, this poor person didn't have the education available to them, and
but they do, right?
But when someone does, and is just like, it's a part of their identity to fight against anyone trying to say anything intelligent in any way, it's hard for me to have that empathy stuff for those people that you
it's hard to imagine being so averse to growth, to learning more and becoming a different person as you learn more. Like, it's very interesting. You're right. Like, I really want to talk to those kind of people a little bit more, really try to find out why they don't want to.
That novelty will wear off in a hurry. I've had my fill. I used to be a factory worker and stuff like that, and that's not to diminish factory workers, but within working third shift in a factory is also like a different level. And then I would go to the bars afterwards, because that's where I was at. I was a 21, 22-year-old, but I was like hanging out with 50-year-olds that would go to a bar at 7 a.m. after their factory job. And so, I got a real peek into
the psyche.
That lifestyle and psyche is like. So, but regardless, my audience is a exceptionally curious audience that is super interested in learning more. So I don't need to worry as much about convincing my listeners that your stuff is worthwhile. Let's just point them in the right direction. What do you got going on that you'd like people to find?
So on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, it's at Inspector Planet. It's Inspector Gadget meets Captain Planet. It's sustainability and innovation coming together, because I don't think that true sustainability can be reached without innovation helping get close to that. So Inspector Planet, and I have a YouTube too, but really the YouTube is mostly for my friends' kids. But I tell you what, that was a kid's show that I do with the animals. I learned something every single time. I had no idea what I was going to say until because I wasn't funded for that. So about 5 minutes beforehand, I would learn all these facts, be completely floored. So then I was super excited to tell everybody about these facts. Like a mantis shrimp, what a badass. Like, seriously, check them out. And have you ever heard a sea lion roar? Like, that will blow your mind. I mean, they're
mantis
like, hey.
Shrimp, what is it that they do? They like shock or something like, what's the
mantis shrimp.
Yeah. What's the thing that they
highest
do?
acceleration in the animal kingdom.
Yeah, it's like a crazy,
They
insane
have
speed
a
of.
spring system, so it's
that's
held
what. Yeah,
back. Yeah, it's pretty. It's amazing what they do, and then like my producer was like, "Oh, ask the question, how similar is a sea lion to a lion?" I'm like, "This is the dumbest thing ever." Turns out a sea lion is like cousins with a bear, first of all, and second of all, when you hear a sea lion actually roar, it sounds literally like a lion. See how excited I am right now because I know nothing about sea lions.
That's amazing.
And
I
so,
didn't know that either.
Yeah.
I knew like the cow dolphin whale connection situation.
I
But
did not. Now I do.
sea lions.
And what about the
Wow.
manatee and elephant? I mean, you could kind of see that they're the same color, but
I didn't know manatee and elephant.
yeah, they had the fingernails. The elephant.
Vestigial nails.
Yeah, apparently.
Wow.
Right. So, like,
Well, maybe they're using the nails.
That's what we have to inspire in adults, and because kids, it kind of comes naturally. But we need to inspire this like curiosity to learn things because there are things all around us, and if we get people hooked on the adrenaline of learning and just exploring, like the whole world can change from that. So that's kind of the mission of Inspector Planet is getting people connected to each other, to the world, to the natural environment, and so our actions change.
You're awesome. I'm so excited for you in your new job. Oh, by the way, I'm sure you knew there's aquatic sloths. Did you know that? In the past, similar, there was a South America. Something happened. There was like some desertification or something like that happened where sloths were running out of food, and their bone density changed so they could sink to the bottom easier. Sloths can hold their breath really well, and they're actually excellent swimmers.
Wow.
I think even today the sloths that exist are faster in water than they are certainly on land, but even climbing. That
kind of makes sense. I mean, think about how they're shaped.
They have the crazy long arms that are perfect for it. And then so there are these aquatic, so they'd go down to the bottom and get vegetation there, and then they went extinct when some canal or something happened that changed the water temperature and
probably humans
and drove them into extinction. I don't quite remember. That one might not have been humans. We are probably responsible for the giant ground sloth that was in Australia that was the size of elephants, and I will never forgive humanity for that, because how awesome would that be if those things still existed?
Have you ever seen a sloth like up close and personal?
No, I want to.
Okay, let me tell you right now.
Yeah.
Like, at first you're like, oh my God, it's a bat. It's a big bat without wings. Like, have you seen the teeth? They have literal vampire teeth and a pig nose. I
know the pig nose.
It looks like a big bat. You got to see the teeth.
What do they have vampire teeth for?
Oh,
They're eating
watch my sloth video. It gets up close and personal. Okay, but the craziest thing is, you look at that, how the hands have evolved, and you're just like, holy hell, like I watched, Not Afraid of the Dark when I was little, and I heard about the guy with the hook hands in the back seat, that you didn't realize was in the car. Like that, the hook hand, like that, this is a crazy animal.
Those hooks are so incredible that they often remain hanging when they die.
I'm not surprised.
They die hanging.
Oh yeah. Like
it's actually protects them from it's a deterrent from poachers.
Oh yeah.
Poachers will try to shoot them or whatever, but they don't. They get them, but they don't. They're still just hanging there. So poachers are like, not worth it. I'm not.
There's no point in killing them up in the tree. That's awesome.
I just called it.
I didn't even
Kill
think
the
about that.
sloth
That's
and-
brilliant.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's thanks for letting me nerd out about sloths with you. It's this is terrific. Why don't you when you get settled in and especially if you have some new project or something like that taken off, like another project like Tracy Ruins Everything or any other kind of media, or you book a TV show or something like that, please get a hold of me and come back on.
I will. There's actually something really exciting. I don't know if I can. Okay, we might have to cut this out.
Well, let's wrap up and you tell me afterwards.
Okay.
How about that? All right. Well, that'll be a teaser for people. So, well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having
By the
me.
way.
It's always a pleasure, Shane. You're amazing.
Yeah, great to see you. And thank you, listeners, for being such wonderful, curious people. We'll see you next time.